Hi, this is Kelsey Bleho, and we're going to be talking about leading with the moral compass. And this is for EDL 855, Module 8. So with this, we looked at various different videos, articles talking about what it means to have a moral compass, what our moral compass is, that kind of thing. So the first video went in depth in kind of what a moral compass is and how to do it. There has to be integrity with every decision that you make. Your yes is your yes. As a leader, people have to be able to trust you. And that means knowing what your line is and when you've crossed it and when not to. You have to find your true north and stick to it. It's necessary because as a leader, your personal life is no longer your own business. It's out there for all to see. So making sure that your personal life is in check too. And then as leaders, we have to have an integrity reflex. It's knowing what's right and what's wrong. And then in the second article, just having a moral compass, this video described it as a set of directions where we need to go and how we need to act. It consists of values of how we're raised, the moral obligation for setting the tone. As a leader, we need to be people first thinking when we make decisions. We need to respect dignity as well. And one quote I really got from this is never to equate a grade point average for a student's self-esteem. I thought that really hit home for me. We need to treat everyone fairly, no exceptions, be honest. And then this video talked a lot about analogies of going to war, how people would literally give up their lives for something. He also talked about leaders putting a line in the sand and having people decide if they wanted to fight or not. And we need to decide what our line is, having a clear set of values, as well to be able to put down our differences and fight the battle. He talked about the space when it's hard to decide if you kind of wallow in decisions. So just knowing what you're going to do and just kind of stick with it. So here's a few more summaries as well. Number 3 is the shortcomings of empathy as a moral compass, which I didn't realize that empathy could be considered a shortcoming. So I feel like this article really talked about that a lot. And how empathy can kind of cloud our best judgment in making the most sound decision. So the author argues that we do not need empathy to make moral decisions, and rather empathy makes us biased to our moral decisions. So I just thought that was really interesting. And so the main argument of the article is that empathy by itself cannot carry the burden of our moral judgment. There is so much more to it. So we need to consider differences of people in society, and kind of just get some understanding rather than empathy with certain things. And this is not feeling his or her feelings, but visiting, enduring, and agonizing unpredictability and uncertainty. And then number 4, moral emotions. So this one kind of goes in the opposite direction. So our moral actions are based on emotions and intuitions. So I just thought that was kind of interesting, the contrast there. As a society, we tend to rationalize our judgment our brains are making instinctively rather than going with kind of our gut feeling. So we tend to rationalize like why we made that decision. Some people have an acute sense of guilt and tend to be more sensitive to morals. They're more aware of when they do something wrong. They might feel guilty afterwards. And then there's kind of this other end of the spectrum where people see like praising that emotion or praising good acts, which is when we watch someone do something and then we act and do something nice for someone else. It's kind of this trickle effect. The video also talked about racism and how it's dehumanizing people, and they say their morals are off, but on the other hand, empathy plays into it and helps us to humanize them again. So I thought that was interesting. And then just a few more summaries. So 6 is a search for the moral compass, so trying to find that. And this article mostly talked about South Africa and how it's been a real struggle for them to find a moral compass. It's one of the most violent, lawless, and morally depraved societies. The main argument of this article is that the main social space for these indigenous people has undergone major social change because they've had a lot of immigrants and different people that have kind of affected their culture. And trying to kind of get that back on track. So they thought a lot about how they could kind of create a document, make it publicized, have some education courses to make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page of having this moral compass. So they talked about having these citizen education and kind of how that can shape their culture. And then Article 7 is the moral compass. That defines a moral compass as pointing a person in the right direction when it comes to making decisions. But it adds that not everyone's moral compasses points in the same direction. So everyone's might be off a little bit. It also goes on to say that many people in society, such as famous celebrities, politicians, sports players, do not play by the same moral compass as other people. So I thought that was really interesting how they kind of have like a different standard. And so it goes on to say, how can it be possible to construct a moral compass that can give the same north reading for all members of society when the mainstream belief of the population is that knowledge is endlessly evolving, that actions and beliefs must of necessity be fluid and adaptable to society's changing culture? I thought that was interesting that they view it as everything's always changing. In the response to this question, religion is thrown out as a suggestion to solving this issue. There are many thoughts and theories that also strike this down. And then the last thing, it is not unreasonable to conclude that most today don't want to know where north is in case that information would interfere with their lifestyle. So again, just knowing that maybe their compass might show some areas where they need to work on. And then here's another summary, and I included some of the step-by-step stuff because I thought that was really important for how to analyze the consequences, analyze the actions of kind of what's going on. So I included the step-by-step there. This author describes a moral compass as, he says it's located in our soul pocket. I thought that was kind of cool. And then he goes on to ask if we know how to use that moral compass in our soul pocket. He describes it as something that is made up of values and that have been developed or formed over a lifetime. So it's not just developed over a year, but over our entire life. And then kind of just some reasons why people don't use their moral compass, and that's to create more work for the person making the decision. The leader believes their ethical choices in conflict with the school's mission. And lastly, they might choose a different option because their choice might bring more benefits than going with their moral choice. So again, some interesting concepts brought up here. Summary number 9. What is a moral compass and why do you need one? So this talks about why someone might need a moral compass. So ground their identity, protect the greater good, increase self-confidence, but be a good role model, and then foster healthy relationships. So if you don't have a moral compass, you're more likely to make rational decisions and not thinking about consequences, be tempted to stretch the truth, in other words, lying. So the main reason of having a moral compass is to actually use it. So again, we learn our morals from a lot of different places, trying to figure out what fits best for us is really important. Overall, the importance of a good moral compass is it can help you strike the right balance in your life between reason and emotion, practicality and idealism, and your needs as well as those of others. So I feel like that just encompasses all the things we've been talking about. And then number 5, set your compass true north. So this article describes a moral compass as a way of pointing us in an ethical direction. So how do we know if our actions are right and wrong? We can test that by looking at possible benefits or harms by choosing a different option. We can look at whether or not it's fair or just, we're treating others equally, and so on and so forth. So I thought that was another way to think about it, which is really cool. We should also try to strive to improve the lives of others regardless of their appearance or beliefs. So looking at my moral compass, I picked these words to fit on it. So respect, honesty, integrity, justice, sacrifice, courageous, acceptance, loyal. Those are all things that I strive to have in my classroom. So I'll just read this off to the side. I plan to use this moral compass in everything that I do as a teacher and future school leader. I plan to be respectful of each of my students and staff that I work with. I will also be honest with my students if I mess something up, and I plan to be honest with my coworkers on how I'm doing. I plan to lead with integrity as a teacher and school leader. I plan to fight for justice and make sure all of my students feel valued and safe at school. I also want to continue to put others first and sacrifice time and money to make sure they're getting the best education they deserve. I want to be courageous and stand up for what I believe in and what is right. I will accept every student, staff, and community member for who they are. I also want to be a loyal leader who is valued for what they do each day. So that's just kind of my moral compass and how that impacts me as a teacher and future school leader. And then here's my references, and then my addendum with my reflection on it. And so kind of some big things that I took away from my personal reflection is this assignment will influence my decisions as a school leader because I will do my best to think through all the different choices and options I have to make through a moral compass and trying to keep that in mind rather than just with feelings, which is something that I can tend to kind of depend on in a situation. And so trying to focus on my moral compass is really good. And then by gaining this content knowledge and creating my own moral compass, it'll just kind of be a good reminder of what my values are and what I need to stick with. Overall, it gave me a good understanding of what a good moral compass is. So yeah, that is my relevancy, correlation, and also personal reflection. Thank you for listening.